admitted to the nursery at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, and my beautiful daughter Michelle was born on December 1st, 2003. Right before she was born, I remember thinking to myself how awful it was that I was giving birth to my first child, handcuffed to a bed and all alone. How did I get there? Michelle and I lived together in the nursery, and I was a model prisoner. I studied hard and got my GED within 2 months. I attended college courses, and I tutored other women working for their GED. I was blown away by Michelle and by how deeply I loved her, and she loved me. Still though, all the things that I was feeling and learning showed me things about my own childhood that were very painful. My mother, who suffers from bipolar disorder, didn't have the tools or the ability to give me the kind of love that I needed and wanted. I knew how much I loved Michelle, and I ached that I didn't feel the same love from my own mother. I wondered if I was undeserving. New York state law allows infants to stay with their mothers in the nursery until their first birthday. So as this big milestone approached, I really worried about where Michelle would go while I served the final 10 months of my sentence. I couldn't bear the thought of her going into the foster care system. The Bedford Hills nursery manager suggested that I send her to Our Children, an organization funded by the New York Women's Foundation. Sister Tisa is a founding member, and she and her team would care for Michelle until I could do so myself. The decision required a huge leap of faith. The day that Sister Tisa came to pick up Michelle was one of the hardest days of my life. I wondered what I would do without my daughter. When I think about that day, I can still hear Michelle's cries as she was carried away. On the day I was released, I was so happy to be reunited with Michelle, and I was hopeful. We lived in one of Our Children's supportive housing units, and I enrolled in the education, life skills, and employment programs that were offered. After a few months, though, Michelle's father was back in my life, and I found myself being more committed to being with him. Before too long, Michelle and I moved out. I had enough of the program structure. I moved back with my mother, and it didn't work out. Michelle and I went to a family shelter. It was a 5-year-long dead-end cycle. I felt like I was drowning, and I realized there had to be more for Michelle and more for me. I called the folks at Our Children, and luckily for us, they welcomed us back with open arms. Today, I'm proud to tell you that me and Michelle are doing well. I'm enrolled in college, we have our own apartment, and I'm the employment coordinator at the Our Children's Working Women's Program. I brought Michelle with me today because I want her to understand that she won't always get it right on the first try. And I want her to appreciate and believe, as I do, that change takes time and that love makes the difference. Thank you.
Please welcome the New York Women's Foundation President and CEO, Ana Oliveira.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Okay. Thank you. Did you see this powerful team? How can we resist? How can we resist life? Thank you so much for being here. Let me begin by honoring our grantee leaders who are here. Will you kindly stand up so we can properly thank you for your work? Quickly. Thank you. So we just heard that change takes time, that change takes many times around, that change is a process. And it is a moment for us in our 25th anniversary. We think this is a game-changing time for the foundation. So I want to thank all of you who have throughout the years poured your hearts, your energy, your resources, your hopes into the foundation. You heard from Helen LaKelly Hunt, and you heard from Betty Terrell Cruz, some of our founding mothers, how much of a dream they had. And so many said it was a crazy dream, it was an unnecessary dream. And it was a dream that couldn't be done because they were bringing women that were different, creating a cross-cultural alliance. And people thought that women wouldn't be able to get along and share their energies for a common goal. And guess what? That's what we do. That's what they did. They set a path for us that we have been following. The foundation now is no longer a possibility. The foundation is a reality that is responsible, has a lot of responsibilities in New York City, where we engage in the business of change, in the business of joining others to generate hope, possibility, and actually concrete, practical change in people's lives. We become part of a better New York. We are really a New York City-made product. You know, there should be a little label that says, this is New York City philanthropy, New York City-made philanthropy. Coming together across all of our differences, not looking at our differences as obstacles that we have to remove, but actually as assets that we need to leverage. Isn't it nice to hear that somebody has a different perspective in the solution of a problem? Isn't it nice to hear that somebody deals with pain and grief and falling and getting up with different sets of rituals and energies that we can learn from and we can tap into? It's a fabulous opportunity. So the foundation stands very humbly on the shoulders of its mothers, on your shoulders, our partners, our supporters, and daily on the whole knowledge, expertise, and leadership of our grantee partners. So you heard a lot about what has happened in the 25 years. And I want to tell you a little bit where we are, and more importantly, where we need to go together. Because 25 years is a generation. And the question for us is, how can we further change the game as we move into the next 25 years? What do we want to talk about 5 years from now when you come back to our breakfast and we are looking at our accomplishments? And what will be people saying, and you will be saying 25 years from now, there was the difference we made together. So, right now in New York City, and we're going to show you some maps, we have about 23% of women and children living in poverty. Look, New York City is a village. It's a village with many villages, right? But it's a village. And you see in the dark blue the areas of very intense poverty, and in the light blue the areas of less intense but still plenty of poverty. 2/3 of the families that have single parents are headed by women. That means that women carry a disproportionate burden, but also a disproportionate possibility of uplifting those families. So what we've been doing this year, you heard that we are reaching our $5 million grant-making mark, which is really important to us. So we're investing $5 million in these leaders that you see here and in the work they do every day. The idea, you see there in the map where the women that are served by our grantee partners live. This is not where the organizations are. This is where the people that they serve are. And you can see that we use a participatory grant-making process. Many of you have participated, and as New Yorkers told us where we need to invest, and you are telling us correctly because we are investing in the areas of direst need. But I will tell you, we are far from where we need to be. So in the next 5 years, by 2016, if we continue to invest $5 million a year, that's what we're going to be. Our presence, and now you see that the pink moves and really covers the areas. That has to do with scaling up. That has to do with something called the tipping point. That has to do with being a game changer. So the tipping point and the game changing that we are looking for is the one that says that we're going to change the trajectory. We're going to change the trend of poverty increasing. And I'll tell you why we can say this. We can say this because we need to do this together. In 2008, 2009, when this recession was declared, and then the recovery began, the foundation took a very bold step, and this is the board of the foundation, unflinchingly said, if people have less, we must give more. That's why I can stand here today with you and say, we should not be daunted by the fact that the economy has not a robust and fast enough recovery. Let's be part of their recovery. Let's do our part in their recovery by investing more in communities when they need it. You heard about some ingenious investments. You heard about the collectives that Speaker Quinn talked about. You heard that solutions are found where the same problems are. That's the power. And that's why we invest in women's leadership, in community-based organizations. And we are also interested in the kind of leadership that you saw in Myrtle, that you saw in Ijen. Ijen and Myrtle sat here having breakfast with us several years ago. And that's the demonstration that we can show you that when you have from the ground up solutions, they scale up and they change the country and the world. We are changed by others. It's also our job to change others. So in 5 years and in 25 years, we want to be able to say together that we reduced poverty, that we increased economic security. We want to be able to say that violence has been reduced. Domestic violence is a rising crime in New York City. That is not acceptable. We must be able to say that we invested enough and that we funded activists and providers that change what becomes acceptable against women in New York City and beyond. We must be able to say that HIV and AIDS, lack of access to good quality health care, has been changed in the city, and we must show to others that that can be done. And we must be able to say that girls and gender nonconforming youth no longer live a life of continued rejections from their families, from institutions, from society. We must be able to say, that we are bringing New York City to a standard that merits its incredible global impact. So, I want to tell you that we began our breakfast very inspired. I was very inspired by the Abyssinian choir, weren't you? And although I can't sing, I do want to say that there ain't no stopping us now. Thank you so much. So, it is my great honor to introduce to you 3 incredibly powerful and dedicated board members of the New York Women's Foundation, who are also co-chairs of our breakfast. And I will begin with Robin Brady Ince and Delaney and Anita Chanapati. Please welcome them.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I stand here today because of my mother, Betty Joyce Medor Brady. You see, my mother was a board member of the Kansas City Women's Foundation. Through her example, she showed me what could be accomplished when women of common purpose come together to make a difference. She was the one who set me on this path to the New York Women's Foundation. It is because of my mother, it is because of her that I am here. But one of the most important legacies my mother left me was the knowledge of how incredibly important it is to be a part of the solution, to step forward, to create community wherever it is that you call home. This is my home. More than 10 years ago, I answered the call to join this table, to stand with women of common purpose, women who believe that it is not enough to know about the challenges we face, but it is imperative that we do something about them. What an incredible, incredible gift to be able to honor my mother's legacy through my work with the New York Women's Foundation, and to be able to share this table this morning with people like Anne and like Anita, and with people like all of you. That is why I give, and that is why I am here. Through the New York Women's Foundation, I know that because of my contributions, I am part of a collective effort to ensure that one block, one neighborhood, one community in this place we call New York City is a better place to live. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I attended my first breakfast 15 years ago. I'll always remember it because it had a profound effect on me. Like today, we listened to each other's life stories and recognized our shared hopes and fears, and that gap that sometimes appears between donors and grantee partners seemed to close. I really needed to be there that morning, and I really needed all of you to be there, because it was then that I realized I do not want to do philanthropy alone. It seemed at cross purposes to the inclusiveness that I felt in the room. We've seen today that there's nothing smarter than our own collective wisdom. The impact of all of you as volunteers, donors, corporate supporters, activists, and our dedicated staff, that allows for best ideas and practices to emerge. I have complete trust that this is the model that can change our world. My only fear is that we don't trust ourselves enough, that we won't scale up enough and move those figures that we saw on the map. So let me make a proposal to you. In recognition of what is at stake for women and girls in New York City, please consider making a bold gift to the foundation this morning, even an audacious one, and I will do the same. Last year, on the day of the breakfast, we raised over $300,000. But this year, with our incredible grantee partners that we need to support, I think we can raise $500,000. We can do that, and I will match that very generous pool of funds. Yep, we can do it. Then at this breakfast today, we will have raised $1 million, and that's what we should be raising here. And New York needs our grantee partners, and they need you. So thank you.
Everything that is happening on the stage this morning, the grantee partners, the honorees, Anna, Robin, Anne, and this impressive sight. I wish you could all see yourselves. You look gorgeous. This is the reason I became a part of the New York Women's Foundation. I grew up in a small town in Western Pennsylvania and came to this incredible city after graduate school. I was raised to believe in the value of community service, that public service was the highest calling, and after moving here, I wanted to be engaged and part of a real community. So when I came to my first breakfast 5 years ago, I knew I had found my community. It was then I realized we are all here together to make this city livable for everyone, and it takes each and every one of us to make that difference. Every year for the past 25 years, the foundation has received donations in every conceivable amount, from the checks of our corporate sponsors, to the woman who slips some cash into the envelope, to the young girls who donate the leftovers from their allowance. Every contribution represents the collective power that's responsible for the incredible impact the foundation has made over the last 25 years. Now, at last year's breakfast, I was touched and honored when each and every guest at my table made a donation. Well, this year, I consider all of you guests at my table. This is one of those moments when we are asking you to simply participate, to be a part of the work that we do. And remember, Ann Delaney will generously match all donations made today so that together we can raise $1 million. So now is the moment when we all engage to push ourselves and this foundation to where it needs to be. In whatever amount you can. It's good, right? In whatever amount you can, join us. Be a part of this movement to make this city livable for everyone. I have my checkbook with me, so I'll be doing it with you. So please take this moment along with me to make a donation. All right? Okay? Thank you for your commitment to our future and to the future of this great city.
Thank you, everyone. I know you'll be very generous. Now I'd like to introduce Abigail Disney, our honorary chair, the producer of Women, War, and Peace, and someone I personally admire.
You guys can write and listen at the same time. We're multitaskers. I have to say I have one emotion forming right now, and I can't quite find the words for it, but it goes something like this. It goes, woo! Nice, we rock. So it's an anniversary year, and that sparks all sorts of reminiscences. 40 years ago, to go back before the New York Women's Foundation, I was a 12-year-old, pigtailed, very feisty tomboy in Southern California. I could throw, shoot, and fight just like every boy in the neighborhood. I broke a girl's nose in one punch. It made me a legend, but it didn't make me any fans among the nuns at the St. Charles School. Still, my brothers and I and the neighborhood boys, we were thick as thieves. We didn't care. We spent our summers playing baseball and basketball and football on the sidewalk until we couldn't see anymore. It was so dark. But no matter how much I did to prove that I was as good as they were, I was always very aware that I was always going to play by a kind of different set of rules. Their dreams didn't have boundaries. When they scooped up a grounder at third base, they were Brooks Robinson. When they hit a jump shot from the baseline, they were Jerry West. And when we gathered in the clubhouse and had a vote, I don't think any of us was thinking of Susan B. Anthony. I don't believe that you can't be it if you can't see it. But I do think it's a lot more difficult to soar when you have no stars to shoot for. It wasn't long after my tomboy days, 25 years ago, when a lot of cockamamie crazy women got together and started something called the New York Women's Foundation. 25 years is really not a long time in the grand scheme of things. Glaciers don't move very far in 25 years. The Grand Canyon looks pretty much the same, no matter how much it's rained on it. And no matter how they've tried, scientists have still not been able to figure out the mystery of what happens to your socks in the dryer. But a lot can happen in 25 years anyway. 25 years ago, we didn't have cell phones, or those of us who had cell phones, they looked like suitcases. And you couldn't get pictures of cats playing pianos on them, no matter how long you waited. A candy bar still cost $0.25. Little Kimmy Kardashian had not quite figured out the video camera yet. And you could probably rent a pretty decent apartment for what a lot of people pay just to park their car these days. Like ATMs and emails, the New York Women's Foundation pretty quickly came to seem both inevitable and indispensable in just that 25 years. It was 20 years ago when I came to my first New York Women's Foundation breakfast, pregnant. 12 days later, I gave birth to a baby girl. Pregnant with a brand new baby, and the country pregnant with a brand new First Lady. And just as that baby grew up and turned out to be quite a spectacular human being, that First Lady has turned out to be quite a series of amazing and wonderful surprises. I remember my first Vote for Hillary's Husband campaign pin. And just as with my daughter Olivia, I wonder how it is possible that we haven't always known Hillary. I can't imagine there's been another historical figure like Hillary Rodham Clinton, and I use the term historical figure very deliberately because let's face it, she has evolved from a nice lady in a pink suit and headband whose smallest comment about baking cookies could create a national scandal, into the hard-charging, forceful, and skilled Secretary of State that she is today. I think of her as the Secretary of State that takes no prisoners unless they're political prisoners and they need a ride home on your plane. I'm sure we all remember the received wisdom about the First Lady Clinton being the most divisive figures in American politics. I mean, how dare she have ideas about health care and a plan even? How dare she? And yet I'm sure you also had the same reaction I had, which was actually listening to what she was actually saying and wondering what the heck was so divisive about all the common sense that was coming out of her mouth. When First Lady Clinton took the bold step of becoming Senator Clinton, she also flew in the face of received wisdom. How could this raging, radical, scary feminist possibly win votes upstate among the conservatives? And yet she did, and won by a wider margin than the received wisdom had predicted that she would. She was our first female senator from the state of New York, and she did us proud. Everyone said she couldn't work across the aisle, and within her short 1.5 terms, she developed a 74% approval rating across the state, including 50% of Republicans. So by the time Senator Clinton threw her hat into the ring for the presidency, the received wisdom had finally come around to the idea that it was okay to wear pantsuits, that she didn't really need the headband to be less scary, and that she was unlikely to set her bra or anyone else's bra on fire, or otherwise upset the delicate sensibilities of the boys in the Senate. But they did say she'd never get as far as she did. And a couple of million cracks in the glass ceiling later, I think that it's safe to say we can stop listening to received wisdom once and for all. Many of us in this room aspire to be leaders. Many of us are leading very successfully now. Most of us do this because we believe in our deepest heart that it's only when we bring women all into their full power across